Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ILO's research webinar today. Today, we'll be talking about patchworking data work, supply chains of AI data production in China. And we are delighted to have with us Julie Chen from University of Toronto. She's an assistant professor there, and she works at the Institute of Communication, Culture, Information, and Technology. And Julie's been working on these issues for almost a decade, and she has done a lot of field work on some of these issues in China and elsewhere. And today, what she's going to talk to us is about the formation of the dynamic supply chains of AI data production in China. And what she tries to do is understand much of this work at a conceptual level, but at the same time bringing out the different types of labor that is being used in the data supply chains. It's not only the home-based freelancers she sees, but it's also people who work in offices who are formal employees in top-tier data supplying firms. But at the same time, you have the other side, that is the informal workers in workshop style subcontracting firms. So we are really pleased to have you here, Julie, with us today. And we look forward to both the conceptualization as well as the empirical evidence that you would like to bring to us from China, because this is something that we often don't get to hear about and we really look forward to hearing from you. So over to you, and you would have about 45 minutes to present, followed by a discussion. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat Q&A and we will field it to Julie. Over to you, Julie.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, maybe morning and evening. Well, first of all, thanks to Uma for this great opportunity to share my research on AI data production in China. So basically today I will be discussing how a multi-layered labor supply structure is emerging in China and its implications for our understanding of data work organization. So my talk draws on ethnographic fieldwork conducted between 2022 and 2024, including participant observations and interviews with 90 data workers. So I will first foreground the often overlooked questions about labor diversity and organizational heterogeneity, followed by a discussion of characteristics of AI data industry in China. My analysis will then delve into labor flow across data workers in three employment relations, namely formal employees, office-based and office-based informal workers, and home-based freelancers. So by mapping multi-layered networks of labor supply for these data workers, I intend to offer a fresh perspective on how data, labor, and information flows through socio-technical infrastructures and organizations, but in a quite distinctive pathways. So I use the access to the labor markets or access to data projects as my point of departure. Well, I will introduce my conceptualization of patchworking in the analysis, but I will elaborate on the broader analytic implications of this notion, the patchworking data work, in my conclusion. So first, I follow the previous work and definition done by Misali and Paceda's definition of AI data work, mainly used to refer to a wide range of human labor involved in data collection, annotation, classification, translation, evaluation, and generation to support the development of AI or machine learning models. Earlier research on AI data work focused primarily on crowd work platforms, approaching platforms analytically as the point of production, according to Gardini, for labor control, value extractions, and of course, labor resistance. Recently, the global AI data production industry has extended the labor supply chain across geographies through networks of PPOs. This trend has prompted scholars to adopt an institutional perspective, particularly through the framework of global production networks and the International Division of Labor. However, these two prevailing frameworks often overlooked the roles of labor diversity and organizational heterogeneity in shaping workers' experience. Research on, like for instance, platform labor has already shown significant variations in workers' employment relations, class backgrounds, educational attainments, and care responsibilities. And all these factors shape workers' different experience and perceptions of digital work. So according to a partial estimates from an industry report, China has over 9 million data workers. And it is likely to be an underestimation because the report didn't include home-based freelancers. AI data industry in China shows how the broader structural forces of just-in-time production regime and distinctive Chinese socio-technical conditions co-shape the market dynamics and data labor politics. The just-in-time production regime normalizes short-term and highly unstable data jobs in the interest of capitalism's value extraction. As Huang Hui pointed out recently, the project-based flexible production regime generates a hyper-precarious labor market, despite the participation of formal organizations such as BPOs. Both home-based and office-based annotators frequently shifted between projects for different clients, each with distinct context and data requirements. What sets China's AI industry apart, however, is organizational labor and platform diversity, reflecting a fluid mix of formal and informal practices. For example, a growing number of domestic general and specialist platforms has emerged, such as 猪八戒, Biao, 树家家, and Romao. Well, you don't need to know the specific names. I'm just giving you the example. And meanwhile, the third-party labor supplies, like here I'm giving you the list of some of the most prominent third-party data supplies in China, such as SpeechOcean, Testen, and Magic Data have gained a leading position in their respective niche market. So these domestic platforms and data firms typically serve Chinese tech companies, but some actually also attract the domestic and the transnational capital investment. Furthermore, the entrenched system of informal labor contracting in China contributes to the formation of tiered data production networks, blending home-based data workers and office employees in formal firms as well as small workshop-style data companies, all with varying organizational resources and constraints. So I'm giving you the fieldwork pictures that I took from home-based and for the office-based informal workers. I couldn't take picture from the side for formal workers because I signed an NDA. So basically, I wanted to say that in order to fully understand the labor supply chain for AI data production, we have to take all of them together for the holistic analysis. So in other words, beneath these formal AI data production organizations and institutions like firms and platforms lies a vast network of small and medium-sized subcontractors relying on, of course, informal labor. Their contributions shouldn't be ignored because, according to the same industry report, they counted for 47% of the data production markets in China in 2021. Furthermore, state promotion and participation have added complexity to the landscape of China's AI data production industry. For instance, in 2020, the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security recognized the AI trainer as an official occupation. And in 2024, the National Data Bureau designated 7 cities across the country as annotation hubs, known as data annotation bases. While the impact of policy incentives from the central government remains to be seen, studies have shown that studies done by Wu and Xia has shown that local governments have played a key role in labor recruitment and management, fostering the rise of data annotation clusters across Western and Central provinces. So here is a picture that I took from an industry conference while the presenters are actually showing the distribution of the data annotation companies. And you can see here, basically, the very large one very big one is centralized, is concentrated in the central province called Henan. I can give you a different perspective, which is from tech companies. When a tech company is seeing like a client, obviously they were able to mobilize all kinds of different organizations and institutions along with crowdsourcing platforms to extract values from a heterogeneous composition of data workers. This is basically this is from a report shared with me by someone who worked for leading tech companies in charge of contracting data annotation business from their company. So next, actually, I will just focus on the labor flow across data workers who are formal employees, office-based informal workers, and home-based freelancers to really see how like labor moves through, especially on the supply side. So labor chains for China's AI data industry is featured by a multi-layered networks. With diverse actors and intermediaries connect horizontally and vertically to facilitate and regulate the flow of labor, data, and infrastructure and information. I describe the constitutive characteristics of this multifaceted infrastructure composed of heterogeneous labor, organization, and technology as patchworking data work. It is through the dynamic, I wanted to argue, it is through the dynamic interactions among workers, capital, data firms, platform companies, and technologies such as annotation software, social media, and more, that this infrastructure takes shape. Simultaneously, they are animated by different workers to shape workers' social relations and practices. With key needs of mediation, labor in different employment relations moves through this infrastructure along different pathways. So I'm going to go like one by one. So first, marked as 1 on this figure represents the formal employed worker. They participate in AI data production through standard labor market and employment, typically via corporate platforms, either developed in-house or provided by clients. For example, in an AI medical imaging project, workers from a top data supplier company access the client designated software and project data using assigned account credentials. When using open access tools such as Label Me, which is widely used for image recognition, they downloaded data sets and then transmitted and annotated data via local area network. Here, like for instance, Xiao Ye, a 27-year-old male data worker at a smart security company, described the technological conditions of his job like this, I quote, "Annotation tools differ across projects. When using third-party annotation platforms or tools, we mostly annotate offline via intranet. Formal employment offers a monthly wage, relatively stable projects, and standardized labor management policies which cover hours, performance, evaluation, compensation, and benefits. However, since data annotation is piecework, the piece rate and overall compensation schemes still vary significantly across companies and projects. So second, it's informal workers marked as 2 on this map. Informal employment relations describes for a work arrangement lacking institutional labor protections or practices falling outside regulations, the so-called off-the-book practices. Therefore, informality can exist even within formal enterprises. As seen in the case of Ray, who is a 43-year-old data worker at a prominent government-backed firm in northwestern China. Ray confronted her informality when her employer denied her Social Security enrollment. Informal office data worker may also be employed by unregistered subcontractors or family-run like workshops, which typically secured projects from major data firms or crowdwork platforms. Well, for crowdwork platforms, they have to register as a data supplier. Some contractors have a hybrid workforce combining in-office and remote workers to maintain so-called numerical flexibility. For example, Xiao Zhi, a 30-year-old male who co-founded a annotation firm in northeastern China, employing 10 full-time data workers and a fluctuating pool of flexible of part-timers who are mainly local students and stay-at-home mothers. He also managed a WeChat group of over 200 on-demand labor reserves. That actually belongs to the third employment relations, which I will explain later. But here you can see I use a lighter color for social media, which means it's part of this supply chain infrastructure, but it also kind of like merge with the home-based workers. So although home office informal workers typically receive monthly payment, they face dual instability in income and project availability. The technological terrain for the flow of informal data labor is fragmented and mediated by data firms, subcontracting relations, chains of subcontracting relations, platforms, and social media. So the third group, well, which designated as third, informal labor also includes home-based freelancers. While some access data projects through crowd work platforms directly, increasingly they have to navigate more fragmented paths through online forums, internet, social media, subcontractors, and then annotation platforms. This creates a patchwork, most prominently, patchwork of technologies that are activated to be contingently functional infrastructures. Freelancers perform all kinds of data work, not that significantly different from office-based workers, from basic OCR to complex 3D point cloud annotation for autonomous driving. Crowdwork platforms, as we know, have built-in training in place before granting task access and provide integrated annotation tools. While algorithmic management remains central, recent studies have shown that platform-organized communication spaces have been on a rise in the Chinese market. Furthermore, mirroring bottom-up entrepreneurial networks emerging among crowd workers in Philippines, as shown by Sherry Sariano's work, Chinese freelancers increasingly form online networks for outsourcing, that's her term, or even re-crowdsourcing, which I will discuss in a minute. For example, here you can see, here is the graph that I highlighted for home-based workers. Xin, a 39-year-old female entrepreneur from northern China, managed over 20 social media groups for data freelancers. Xiu Mi, who founded Xin through QQ, which is one of the largest social media platforms in China, was searching for gig work in 2017 and joined Xin's group as a part-time annotator, but becomes a full-time by 2019. In 2020, she launched her own team of 8, comprising local stay-at-home mothers, a white-collar worker, and several other online contacts. While still working under Xin as an annotator and a quality inspector, Xiu Mi are now outsourcing some projects to his own small team, taking a cut in the process. Freelancers' incomes are subject to the pay schemes implemented by both the crowd work platforms, as well as the informal group leaders. A crucial insight in this mapping exercise into understanding AI data production in China and the global South, I would argue more generally, is that it entails multi-layered infrastructure beyond just the crowd work and annotation platforms to enable the flow and value extraction of diverse data labor. This distinct multi-faceted mediation evolves old and new technologies, but also give rise to a dynamic integration and separation of informal infrastructure. I'm borrowing this term from Prince Guma, and the formal infrastructure. So this interweaving of formalization and informalization is actually a defining pattern in China's digital economy, as studies on ride-hailing, e-commerce, and online literature studies have shown. As Yilen Zhao noted, The development of Chinese digital platforms is underpinned by their negotiation with formal, informal tenants to carve out their operational space. This process reveals how platform-based informal labor practices are deeply linked to, and I quote, extend circuits of informality. Similarly in AI data production, scholars have recognized that social media and other communication space are integral for collaboration, control, and mutual support. Yet I wanted to argue that the customary informal practices, especially for information search and exchange within semi-private social media groups, have transformed these platforms from support communities into a more structured channel for organizing data labor and reconstituting labor relations. In such a way, social media groups are operationalized as what, again, Prince Guma has called informal infrastructure, functioning as a virtual labor market that connects home-based workers with subcontractors and informal entrepreneurs. I will provide more evidence to elaborate on this point later in my talk. So as such, I would argue that the patchwork, the nature of AI data labor supply, is not a natural development ushered in by dominant tech company or capital or an extension of platform logics. On the contrary, it takes shape from the situated negotiations and the interactions among diverse actors, shaped by local context and the relational dynamics. However, labor stratification through patchworking raises a crucial question. The flow of labor data information across the three groups of data workers overlap, branch, and merge at various nodes, which suggests a nonlinear and differential labor integration process. But then how exactly are these different types of data workers incorporated into labor market in the first place? So I will be talking about their access infrastructure, meaning how they access jobs and how they access the labor market. So labor recruitment is a crucial component of cross-border labor migration infrastructure, according to Chen and Lindquist, and it is increasingly mediated by social media and other digital technologies. The low entry barriers enabled by digital platforms have eclipsed the importance of traditional labor intermediaries. Instead, scholars tend to argue that digital labor platforms themselves started to act as intermediaries, governing job matching, transaction, and value extraction. As Andrew Jesevic argues that the power of platforms intermediation and mediation lies in its roles in reconstituting and the labor market and labor relations. Labor intermediation did not disappear, but has taken new forms, continuing to shape digital labor markets in China and elsewhere where the informal economy dominates. In the context of AI data production, the dynamics of labor recruitment, or to put it more precise, how a worker gains access to data projects, merits a closer scrutiny. So I'm going to explore this through the lens of what I call access infrastructure, by which I mean the assemblage of technology and normative practices that enable or constrain labor mobility and access to data projects. I have identified two key mechanisms. The first one is formalization through platform-based exclusion. So access infrastructure actually diverge depending on workers' position in the labor market. For formal data workers, it is essential for us to actually trace what technology and institution enables formal labor recruitment. Take Yuanzi as an example. She's a 23-year-old college graduate. Her first job is actually data work, secured through formal channels. She was once scammed in college. This past experience actually sharpened her alertness to rampant online job frauds. And she said, I quote here, "For job search, I only use Zipin.com, which is one of the leading job searching platform, and my college's recruitment webpage, because I'm really afraid of being scammed, especially by shady share companies. I'm hesitating to use too many platforms. Zipin.com hosts job listing posted directly by business owners, making it relatively formal and legitimate. It hosts a wide range of companies, but not miscellaneous ones. I think what she meant here is like a not like illegitimate ones. Yuanzi got the position together with her roommates, and both attended the company's orientation, during which HR introduced the company's history, mission, policies, and nature of data work. A guided tour familiarized them with ongoing projects and the work culture. In fact, her employer is a participating enterprise in the municipal government's program promoting college graduate employment. A government-issued certificate was mounted on the wall in the reception area, along with other plaques for patents and awards. These formal orientations and the visible endorsements from industry, from peers, from governments help establish the company's credibility, fostering trust among new hires like Yuanzi. Yuanzi's job application reflects a typical route into formal data work, often secured through campus job fairs or platforms like Zhiping. The literal meaning of Zhiping is direct hire by the boss, which is a leading job site in China. These platforms enforce standardization and the government through system design, not that different from digital labor platforms. For instance, registration requires detailed, gap-free educational history, which can disadvantage women with career interruptions or those without higher education degree, and hence reduces their chance of securing a formal employment position. So here, I'm actually showing you a screenshot of what the job posting looks like. So here is the original version. I actually translated it into English. Well, you don't have to read through them, but I just wanted to highlight some aspect here. So job posting adhere to a standardized format using formal languages to outline responsibilities, required qualifications, pay scales, and benefits. Keywords are included, possibly to facilitate classification and recommendation algorithms. Platforms' formalization of labor recruitment may enhance its credibility among job seekers. But it also enables algorithmic exclusion tied to existing socioeconomic inequality. Hiring platforms' exclusionary formalization contributes to the overrepresentation of young college graduates in formal employment without significant gender imbalance, while pushing older and often female workers into the informal labor market, where they have to find and establish their own access infrastructures. Last point, a formal position does not guarantee stable access to data projects. Data workers like Yuanzi are at the front row to bear the brunt of market volatility. She shared, and I quote, "Data projects are unstable. When there is no data, I can only stay at home taking it easy," end quote. But this downtime comes at the cost of reduced income. So now I'm moving on to the second. Social media as a virtual marketplace for data labor. So similar to Yuanzi, Du Luo, a 29-year-old mother of 2 children, worked as an office informal data worker in central China. She shared Yuanzi's experience of project instability and described a nearly identical scenario. She said, "Data projects are often precarious. My employers ask me to not come to the office when there isn't enough data." However, her access infrastructure differs significantly. Without a college degree and having spent years doing odd jobs as a migrant worker, she returned to her hometown in 2022 to care for her young children. She stumbled upon a data job posted by a local firm on Douyin, which is the domestic version of TikTok. As Du Luo noted, many stay-at-home mothers browse short videos for leisure, making platforms like Douyin a key recruitment channel for home-based digital labor, which is not restricted to data labor, but also includes customer service and e-commerce. So here I'm going to show you an example of what this Douyin job ads feels like. I'm going to click, but audio is in Mandarin. I have translated some of the key information on the left, and I wanted to also point out that the screenshot here, which I captured from the web page, has an English translation already. I don't know is that machine translation or it's translated by the job poster.
咱公司是安阳市新成立的一家 AI 智能数据标注公司，工作范围2D、3D 点云拉框。因公司是新成立的，需求一些质检员、标注员，年龄要求35周岁以下，工作简单轻松，不用外出，懂得电脑基本操作即可，底薪加提成，多劳多得，干得好的能拿5、6千。如果你擅长这方面，欢迎你的加入。
抖音。
So these 30-second short videos typically feature a quick tour of the workplace with voiceover briefly mentioning data annotation tasks, such as this person mentioned the 2D and 3D point cloud box inbounding. Many ads highlights a base rate plus a commission model and promote the idea that the more you work, the more you earn. Educational requirements are often downplayed or omitted. In addition to short video platforms, WeChat, public accounts functioning for local services, and social media groups such as those on QQ are all key channels for data subcontractors to recruit temporary and informal labor. I'm going to show you 2 more examples. Here is one posting through QQ group. Here, actually, these are jobs posted by 4 subcontracting, looking for all kinds of different informal workers. And another, it ranges from audio projects to line lining for autonomous driving to text projects. And similarly, this is the one that actually targeting home-based freelancers, which highlights time commitment and the simplest version of how to move forward if they are interested. So similar to informal office data workers, freelancers also rely on social media, online forums, and the internet in general to search viable data job opportunities. For example, Yu Ruo, who is a 35-year-old home-based freelancer since 2017, she primarily accesses projects through more than 10 active QQ groups. Well, due to job precarity, freelancers are often juggling multiple platforms and social media groups. And here, my findings about how home-based workers remain quite vigilant. It's in line with Gray and Sorry's finding. The only difference is that the home-based workers in China, they tend to also combine all kinds of different platforms with active participation searching in those social media platforms. So here I can give you an example. Li Xia, who is a 30-year-old and also a mother of 2 children, she was mainly using a platform called Aiboke, which is a crowdsourcing platform owned by iFlyTech, a partially state-owned enterprise specializing in voice recognition and translation. Well, Aiboke is her main platform, most frequently used platform. However, she's also quite active in 2 social media groups. One has more than 200 people, the other has more than 600 people. And these 2 groups are specialized in different kinds of data work. One is for audio subtitling, the other is for bounding boxes projects. So based on this, I wanted to argue that social media becomes informal access infrastructure for AI data labor supply, complementary to crowd work platforms that home-based workers have to register before use. Social media groups could be construed as a virtual marketplace for data labor, connecting home-based workers and other informal workers with data subcontractors and facilitating data access exchange. They add a technological layer that enables what Sariano called re-outsourcing, where worker entrepreneurs subcontract parts of their jobs to others. the practice of re-outsourcing could easily scale up to re-crowdsourcing because the mechanisms of task posting, open call, and informal sign-up are put in place to mobilize unspecified data workers and online groups much wider than the familial and kinship networks seen in outsourcing. So recognizing social media as part of informal access infrastructure does not negate their roles in communication, collaboration, community building, and labor control. An infrastructure lens, I would like to say, reviews how technological practices condition and mediate the differential labor mobility, as well as regulating what Smith called labor mobility indeterminacy. The infrastructure roles are manifested in two ways. So first, informal access infrastructure reshapes the flow and the transaction of information in AI data production. Well, access to data projects is information in the first place. However, in theory, it is designed to be individualized, tied to personal accounts on crowd work platforms and controlled by firms in formal employment. Individualized access or accounts is key to the development of reputational metrics and the platformization of labor control through algorithms. In practice, however, this model of algorithmic control has already been subverted by crowd workers who frequently share or operate multiple accounts to game the reputational system. Practices like re-outsourcing and re-crowdsourcing further destabilize the algorithmic trust system by rendering access to data work shareable and tradable beyond the orbit of platforms and the immediate social networks of families and friends. So here, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read out loud the interview quotes. As explained by You Yi and Chen Yi, what data workers receive is actually the gateway leading to platforms or specific project sites. Once granted access, they join the team groups and work independently or collaboratively under project-based management. As a result, informal access infrastructures are thus highly transactional and ephemeral, yet crucial in directing labor flows. These exchanges go beyond well-documented task sharing and mutual support because they often involve human mediations in task distribution and management. These transactions are both social and financial. However, a profound negative consequences of trading access information is a cascading subcontracting chains, which further obscure labor relations and shifting risks downward to the most vulnerable workers, who are often home-based women data workers at the bottom of the data labor hierarchies. Second, in the absence of formal reputational metrics, informal access infrastructure foster new social norms and practices, particularly pertaining to trust. Communication, as I've shown earlier, communication in those social media spaces is streamlined for speed, clarity, rather than comprehensiveness, with task posting resembling text messages, informal, concise, and designed to prompt quick responses. Colloquial language is common, often emphasizing time commitment, team size, and payment cycles. In this transactional space, workers develop a vernacular trust system to assess credibility and manage risk. For instance, indicators like group activity levels and timely payments serve as qualitative signals of reliability, used to evaluate both individual posters and the trustworthiness of the entire social media groups. One last point I wanted to make before conclusion is that the social norms and the practices surrounding outsourcing and re-crowdsourcing in data labor supply actually mirror those of local labor service markets, which historically connects migrant workers, time staffing agencies, and employers, funneling informal labor to China's industrial capitalism. So here is a screenshot from a recent a documentary done by NetEast, which tracks the migrant workers' daily labor markets in a central city in China. So in this sense, social media as a virtual labor market represents a strand of access infrastructure divergent from, but also complementary to the formal labor market and the infrastructure. Accommodating, it is actually this kind of informal access infrastructure which makes it possible to accommodating labor diversity and simultaneously creating and perpetuating the internal labor hierarchy among data workers. It actually symbolizes the digital migration, or you may say digital mediation of the long-standing informal labor service markets like this that I show in the picture. So very quick, Uma, how much time do I have?
You can take another 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes.
Okay, I think that's enough. So to conclude, well, so far I've shown that how diverse technologies and organizational forms facilitate a flexible yet stratified labor supply for AI data production in China. I also highlight how workers' socio-economic backgrounds and the digital practices are intimately related to the supply chain capitalism's logic as articulated by Anna Tsing, which is scaling through differentiation. Well, differential incorporation into data labor market is an important dimension of patchworking nature of data work. Admittedly, labor differential incorporation is how capitalism works, and nothing new here. Nonetheless, it remains significant to unpack how new and old technologies, informal and formal practices, in effect, intertwine to engender layered forms of mediation and differentiation of data labor. So data labor supply chains are characterized, at least for my study, by a profound level of technological mediation and contingent relations between data workers, projects that are available, organizations, and technologies. I theorize these dynamic and contingent expressions of chains of labor supply as patchworking. So I argue that a variety of platforms and technologies has actually sunk into the data labor supply infrastructure. So they are not just for communication purposes, it's actually for the data labor supply. Interwoven with networks of more traditional labor market organizations, such as subcontractors, to condition, enable, and mediate the stratification of data labor. The formation of a stratified data labor market is shaped not solely by profit-driven tech companies or a broad, flexible production regime, which is strengthened by crowdsourcing platforms, but also by the local prominent subcontracting practices and the workers themselves who leverage, both actually leverage technological affordance of social media and mobilizing the social relations to navigate access to labor market. Echoing Panay's insight about manufacturing, that garment workers actually also take part in shaping global production networks in manufacturing. I want to stress that the notion of patchworking data work points to an imbrication of top-down capitalist structural power and bottom-up forces embodied by entrenched informal labor practices and workers. So patchworking data work is more than a constitutive feature of the labor supply chain and the data production infrastructure. It is well, my intention, it is a conceptual tool to understand how AI data labor supply is mobilized locally. This notion captures the contingent and inconsistent nature of infrastructures activated to accommodate diverse data labor force. With its annotation, well, patchwork, with its annotation of pieces stitched together, the notion of patchworking also underscores the unstable and improvised roles of platforms in enabling and constraining data labor mobility across spaces and organizational barriers. I wanted to point out that it is actually no longer productive to construe the mobilization and regulation of AI data supply solely through the lens of platformization or spatial division of labor. So I hope that the concept, I hope you enjoy my presentation of empirical findings, but also I hope that the concept of patchworking data work can broaden the analytical lenses to go beyond the platform or formal institution centrism, foregrounding the roles played by informal organizations and workers in shaping AI data production. Well, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Julie, for this very fascinating presentation on patchwork data. And I also liked the concept that you have tried to actually introduce in the process. So I'd like to request colleagues, if you have any questions, to either raise your hand or you can put the question in the chat and we will ask Julie. And meanwhile, Julie, probably you could remove the PowerPoint and come to the screen and we could have a discussion. I think one of the first questions while we wait for others to pose is that you talked about 9 million data workers based on a report. Where is this data coming from? How has it been collected? And, can you say something more about, you had three types of firms. Can you tell us a bit more about where within those firms are they actually distributed?
This is one of the only statistics that I get hold of in terms of the size of the workforce. It is a report released by a industry, I would say, consultants or research institutes. That's the estimation that they have. They only include office-based workers, over 9 million. I'm actually not quite sure how they collect the data. But in the report, they offered kind of like a bird's eye view of the key data suppliers in the industry. I found the report quite informative, but I also found there is a news reporting, which actually reports even a higher number of data workers in China, which I didn't choose to use, but I think it's about the range. Another indicator of the size, it was done by a group of researchers who actually research crowdsourcing platforms in China. So they estimate the size of the crowdsourcing crowd workers in China. They have a much bigger number, like more than 10 million, something like that, in those range.
This is the crowdsourcing, you mean?
Well, yeah, crowdsourcing, meaning all kinds of work, like, design, translation, customer service, all kinds. So yeah, I wish I have more information in terms of their methods, but actually I don't. One of the things that in terms of the where those companies are. So for me, I'm interested in workers in different, I call it employment relations. It's because it is the very, very top and the slim slice of the workers who I would call is relatively elite full-time data workers who work for, like, for instance, the in-house data annotation centers for the leading tech companies. So for them, they typically are graduates from the elite universities as well in China. The locations for their job is actually the tech hub in China, like in Hangzhou, Shenzhen, Beijing, those places. But except for that, I would say the data workers in China are actually concentrated in the hinterland, and for the even for some of the top supplier companies, the main location where actually the workers actually sit and work are located in the central, northern and the western region of China. It's because of the local labor costs are lower. So yeah, so that's how it would like map geographically speaking. But for now, I haven't seen any study. I think it's probably too early. I haven't seen any study really delved into the government, state and the market dynamics in terms of shaping the regional clusters. The information that I have, I actually visited one of those so-called clusters, is that the companies that are headquartered in those clusters, they could also be the data subcontractors. So there is, I hate to say this, but it seems to me there is no viable logic to really determine whether a company that's affiliated in a like state-backed clusters are subcontractors or they are formal organizations. I think it is more likely to be the decision by the individual companies.
Okay, I think on that point, we have some questions coming, but I have a few more before we jump in there. I think added to that, I want to ask you that do you see that the kind of tasks that are being done, you did talk about resourcing and re-outsourcing and all of that. Do you see that there are differences in the kind of tasks that are done between the formal companies, the informal subcontractors, and the home-based workers in the nature of task? Are there any differences that you see?
I think the major difference, well, I would just say major difference between formal workers versus informal ones.
Mm-hmm.
The major difference in terms of the nature of tasks, it is for the formal workers who can work on, like for instance, research-oriented data projects. For instance, the example that I gave in my talk for AI-assisted medical imaging. And of course, highly confidential content moderation work could also be that. But unfortunately, I haven't interviewed anyone, or maybe I interviewed one who involved in some of the content moderation work. But I haven't 90 data workers that I interviewed. Only one have engaged with in content moderation. So for formal data workers, they have the privilege to work on highly secured and confidential projects, which typically, research or in-house ones for research and development done by tech companies. But for all the informal data workers, I actually didn't see much like significant differences when it comes to data projects between informally employed like office-based workers versus home-based freelancing workers. Actually, this is actually a surprising finding for me as well. I found that home-based freelancers, data freelancers in China, now they are engaged in quite complex tasks. Like for instance, for those involving 3D, data points crowd for autonomous driving. So yeah, I guess the only
Basically, you're saying annotation tasks.
Sorry?
Annotation tasks.
Well, they also do data collection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Data collection.
Or generation, transcription, or all kinds. Yeah.
Okay. One of the questions that we have is that are most data workers in China data labelers, and annotators in this large bottom of pyramid? I think you sort of answer it, but you want to take that a bit more in detail?
Because I follow the existing definition of data work, which actually covers annotation, transcription, data generation as well, and verification. I have encountered all of these kinds. So the workers have engaged in annotating, classification, sometimes also generating data. I even interviewed a worker who basically works as a trainer for the AI chatbot. So she was engaged in like a knowledge co-production relations in the process. So I would say, yeah, I would say it's like a broader because the data work definition that I use has a broader scope.
Okay. The second question, which I also had in mind, was does China export the data products, that is label data, annotated images, to the global market? And add to it, I want to add a bit more to it and ask you, in your own research and research based on others in China, is all of this, the three tiers that you're talking about, meeting the demands of the local demands, that is the companies within, or also the global demands? And is any of this data labeling also being outsourced? I do know that coming from India, we do have a hub where there's quite a bit of data labeling done for and data annotation done for the Chinese market. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Does China export the data products, data sets, and annotated images to the global market? Well, I have to admit that I have very limited knowledge on the business side because my project is focusing on the data workers. So I'm taking a worker's perspective. Usually, data workers and I mean the system is designed in such a way that workers has the process is opaque for the workers to know the purpose, the end product of the data sets, and how they are going to be monetized or whatsoever. So yeah, unfortunately, I have no idea to which degree those Chinese tech companies are exporting the data sets that they have to the global market. The only thing that I wanted to share is several leading tech companies, especially in audio transcription, audio recognition, text to speech, and like facial recognition, computer vision companies in China, their technology are really advanced. So if like for instance, any of you found that Chinese companies indeed export the data sets to the global market, it won't be a surprise to me. Then in terms of Chinese companies are outsourcing data work to other countries, yes, I think India is now a known site for Chinese companies to outsource some of the data annotation projects. The other side that I know is Brazil. Apparently, companies like TikTok started to mobilize Brazilian, data workers, mainly for content moderation work. One of the things that I wanted to point out is, I think this is also in line with other scholars' finding that typically data workers, in terms of the labor force, data workers are often found that they are some of them are also engaged in content moderation work. So there is no like big distinctions between them. So some scholars also study those who do content moderation as a form of data work. So yes, so Brazil is like a booming site for now. To be honest, I'm
Largely
thinking
because of TikTok being used in Brazil, so they want to ensure that the content moderation happens right there.
yeah,
I suppose.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, there's another question that Ziming has, the third one. The provider side of this labeled, that is a data market, seems very diverse. What about the labeled data consumption? Are there a few companies or are also very diversified? They have their own big suppliers or also need these patchwork data. And then I have a question on the patchwork data itself that I want to come back to.
Okay, so I would say yes. I would say yes on the demand side. I think that has something to do with the nature of all the knowledge paradigm that underlying the current model for data-driven model-based AI data production. Meaning that the projects are like context specific. For each team, they have to define their like scenarios and develop their own rules, this and that. So different clients have different set of requirements. Well, I didn't include that in my talk today, but I have shown my work elsewhere. Like for instance, I found workers who working on audio transcription for audio in Cantonese. So those data workers are just specialized in those projects. But they found that different clients have different so-called Cantonese to Cantonese written language dictionaries. So I would say the way that, and because it also has something to do with tech companies' so-called competitiveness. Some of them would rather develop their own annotation software or website or web page instead of using the so-called third-party, crowd work platforms such as Appen. So when it comes to that, the technological configurations, I would also argue it's kind of like a patchwork. It's not consistent, especially from the worker's perspective. Different similar audio projects requires different set of technologies, and they have to be abide by a different set of rules. So that seems to me it's like quite like patchworking in that sense. And for the companies, I think it's probably because of the development of electric cars in China. The autonomous driving seems to be a very prominent sector for the demand of data work, meaning that it has like a diversified tendency for the companies who want to develop, AI models, that they would actually enter into the market. Very traditional state-owned car maker companies in China also becomes a demand or like a client for autonomous driving data annotation. So yeah, I would say they were diversified in a sense. But of course, small companies would see little like a return on investments in terms of acquiring or demanding data annotation work. So there are some diversification, but not that to the degree as the workers.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julie. I want to come down to your analytical lens of patchwork that you talked about, top down, bottom up, more than a constituted feature of supply chain. And I was wondering, listening to you, is part of the reason the way it is coming up as a patchwork is because of lack of employment creation and or employment creation or employment policies in many of the regions, especially at the local level. And then you suddenly see that, oh, well, there is this opportunity, let's jump onto it, and then actually go about doing it. So this seems to be more a natural path, or this is something that, well, the government needs to find a way out, and then it jumps on to any kind of jobs that are coming. So I wanted to hear a bit more about the local policies and the thinking behind the adoption of it. Related to that, I do want to ask you, which you did not go into the discussion today, is about the skills. Who are these people that you're talking about?
Oh, sorry, who are these people?
You're talking about, like, what are the skill sets that they have? And, how does it relate to the kind of work? Because these two are, for me, very interrelated in a way. Because it's about, job creation, but it's also, as you showed in many of your slides, it doesn't need too much of thinking, stress-free, anybody can do it kind of thing. So, there's a narrative there too, right? And I just want you to go a bit more deeper into some of these thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So first, is it because of the lack of employment creation? I would actually argue that the government, from the central government to the local government, actually participated in the active promotion of, broadly speaking, digitally mediated kind of gig work. So that's actually the policy landscape in China, and specifically related to data work. Especially after, I think last year, I mentioned that last year the National Data Bureau announced several cities to be the designated city to build for data annotation hubs. Well, these cities are not the first ones that have data annotation hubs, or they call it data annotation bases. There are several in existence already. But after that, or even since 2020, when the AI trainer has been listed as the official new job, local government actually would organize, like for instance, occupational training services to have someone. It's typically from the local data annotation companies to run several like training sessions. And I've also noticed that because of the institutionalization of AI trainer as a new occupation, now there are certifications of skill certifications. I even took one just as a part of my field work. So again, there are some institutional aspect of it. So usually you need to take part in the training and then went to the local social security bureau to finish the testing on site. Basically, it involves some of the project's completion, and then they will offer you a certificate. However, as far as I know, these labor markets, the labor market for data work, they actually do not require any of these kind of like skill certificates, which actually goes back to your question about skill sets. So what I found, again, the stratification, the labor hierarchy that really interests me is that I found that there is a demand in the industry for specialties, like for instance, dialect or specialized college majors like law or foreign languages. So English nowadays is not a good market in China now. Other like minor foreign languages. So what these clients or tech companies what they typically do is that they would actually hire students interns instead of hiring those uh, on like a college graduates. I have visited one company who specializes in so-called smart contracting, aiming to offer services as part of the automation for legal services. They hire master law school students as students intern because they know they have the expertise. So I think here we can see a separation of expertise or more cultural knowledge. If we also talk about dialects, cultural knowledge instead of like skills. So when it comes to specific skills, I'm actually currently writing a paper in terms of the dissolution of the ideas of skills, because for them they would typically require an age requirement for the like job posting, 35 years and below, and I think they were using age as a proxy to filter out those who are not digital natives. So basically, they are requiring basic like computer skill, computer like navigation, how to use the keyboard, know the shortcuts, that kind of thing. What actually happening in the industry is for all the three types of workers that I have studied, there is an intensification of learning. So they do not filter out workers based on like skill sets or required skills, unless it's a more specialized project. They invest, both companies and the workers themselves, invest tons of time and energy in learning to familiarize with specific projects. So this is definitely the trend of descaling, because it becomes so precarious and transactional. Once you finish one project, there is no accumulation of your skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a way, what you're trying to argue is that because you say that it's active promotion from the central and the local government, so the government very clearly sees this as part of its automation, digitization aspect. Am I right in understanding?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also because the youth unemployment in China now is so bad.
Yeah.
So I think on one hand, they are actively promoting, but on the other hand, it's also quite pessimistic in the sense that if the workers are moving into like digital sectors. And again, this is a broader trend, not specific to data annotation. And also, especially for the part-time workers, they come to do the data work when they have a full-time job, but using it as a supplementary income.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask colleagues if they have any other questions. Does anybody want to raise any questions? Okay, I have one more to go. I wanted to ask, based on the research you've been doing and knowing the China's landscape and market around this. Have you been able to see, and I think you sort of allude to it in some areas, like very clearly, there is a project of automation for autonomous cars. So there's a lot of that annotation work for autonomous cars happening, which is both annotation, data labeling. Then there's another one that you went about talking on smart contracting for automating legal services. Then you talked about medical imaging kind of a thing. So can you tell us a bit more about what are the key areas where, this data work is happening in China? Is there,
Oh,
based on the work that you have been doing, based on the
yeah.
interviews you've been doing, some trends that you see very clearly that, okay, we all know about content moderation, right? We all know that irrespective of the country, there's a lot of content moderation that is happening. We do know a lot of annotation that is happening with regard to autonomous cars, but this annotation extends to a number of other areas like medical imaging and all of it. So, can you tell us a bit more as to where China is headed for, or what do you see happening in China?
That's such a difficult question. Um, well, I appreciate it. The way that I see it, things are also like evolving rapidly. I think those like image recognition, drawing the rectangular for the image recognition is actually declining in terms of the jobs. Autonomous, all data annotation work related to autonomous driving seems to be growing. And another area that I see increasing is the ones related to the development of large language models and the chatbots. Well, chatbots can be or bots in general that can be used for all kinds of different tasks. Like for instance, the automation for debt collection,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of so again, I've seen the proliferation of more complex
Mm-hmm.
data work. It's not just annotation, it's data work, in a sense that some or many Chinese tech companies see the opportunities of incorporating like AI or machine learning in their sectors. I think like customer service is definitely one of them. But customer service have to be like specified in different kinds of services. Debt
Mm-hmm.
collection is one of them. The other one is like recruiting loyal customers.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically those workers, what they do is actually AI training. So they have to like their daily job is to train the model from very rough, inaccurate responses, then moving towards better performance. But they can never be fully automated. But what ended up happening is the data worker, or well, they call themselves AI trainers, um, they would be in charge of several those chatbots because a lot of work has been automated, but they need to be responsive when certain tasks couldn't be automated.
Mm. That's super interesting. I want to touch upon when you talked about the development of large language learning models, DeepSeek. How is it that DeepSeek came by in such a short time? And do you have any insights about it?
No, sorry, I actually I have no idea. I was just surprised to know that company as any other as the general public. Yeah.
Mm. So this is not something you encountered during
During my fieldwork?
yeah.
No, I actually visited several companies in Hangzhou,
Uh,
the city, but I've never really visited that company. Oh, when it comes to there is another area that's increasingly growing. It's the text recognition, text to speech software for educational purposes.
mhm. That's interesting too. And this is widespread, and this is where the whole issue of cultural knowledge and the dialects come into place, I guess.
Oh, well, I would say it's even more general. Like for instance, some companies decided to work on how to automate a software to recognize a student's performing music. Or that's quite specific, right? That's quite culturally specific. But there are also companies who are trying to develop like learning assistant tools, so that when they were using those like pens, right? When they were using pens assisting reading. So again, so those are the areas that's developing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Julie. I don't think we have any more questions, but it's been a pleasure to talk to you and exchange with you on your research on patchwork data workers in the AI supply chains in China. I think we learned quite a lot about what's been happening in the Chinese market on these AI tools and automation that is going on. And I think we'll continue this discussion as we move forward. Thanks for taking the time and coming and talking to us at the ILO. Wishing you a very good afternoon and wishing you all a very good day.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a absolutely delight.
Pleasure is ours.
Yeah.
See you. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone.